twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GBNews.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good evening. We have the very latest news for you here on GB News, and I can tell you it's concerning the heatwave in Britain. We know that large fires have ravaged parts of England after today's record-breaking temperatures. Major incidents have been declared by the fire brigades in London, Leicestershire, South Yorkshire and even Buckinghamshire. Residents of Wennington near Dagenham in East London had to be evacuated from their homes as around 100 firefighters tackled a blaze that spread to residential areas. At least 2 people were taken to hospital after suffering from smoke inhalation. Dave Biles was one of those forced to evacuate. He spoke to GB News earlier.
Such a shock. All of a sudden the police were knocking at doors, evacuate, evacuate. I was one of the last out of our group to evacuate because I had to shut everything down. Took smoke in, I want to see the ambulance in a minute, get myself checked, you know, but the whole thing is just it's just something you don't think will ever happen. It's just something you see on TV. Oh, this is devastating, devastating. We've been here 27 years. Most of the people along there, you know, you make your home what it is, you know, and that's where you think you're going to be the rest of your life. And for something like this, devastating.
Temperatures in the UK have reached over 40 degrees, we understand, today. Sorry, some problem there with my autocue. And that's for the first time in the UK. The Met Office say a provisional reading of 40.3 degrees was measured in Coningsby in Lincolnshire. Red extreme heat warnings continue for millions of people in England, with amber warnings for most of Britain. The heat is causing major disruption to transport networks, with no trains running out of King's Cross, London St Pancras or Euston, and there is a limited service out of London Marylebone. Hospitals have also been affected today and forced to scale back the number of planned surgeries. And the London Ambulance Service say it's answering around 400 calls every hour from patients experiencing heat exposure. Let's take a look at politics now. And Kemi Badanok is out of the Conservative leadership race after a ballot by the 1922 committee today. Former Chancellor Rishi Sunak secured the most votes with support from 118 MPs. Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt came second with 92 votes. The Foreign Secretary Liz Truss secured 86 votes. The next and final ballot among MPs takes place tomorrow, where candidates will be whittled down to the final 2. We'll have full coverage of that for you here on GB News. Well, in other news today, some public sector workers are to receive their highest pay rises for more than 2 decades. Over 1 million NHS staff, that includes nurses, paramedics and midwives, will receive a £1,400 annual pay rise, with the lowest earners to receive as much as 9.3% in rises. Eligible dentists and doctors will also receive 4.5%, and we understand police officers are to receive 5%. You're up to date on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News, where now it's time for Headliners.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Welcome to Headliners. Joining me tonight we have Leo Kearse and Steve N. Allen. Gentlemen.
Hello.
How are you?
All right.
Very good. Well, You had that planned. Do you want to be on the same level as Steve, or do you want to bring that back up a little
I
bit?
see myself as I'm middle class.
Yeah, OK, we're doing the old two Ronnies and John Cleese thing. Yeah, excellent.
Good evening.
How have you coped, gentlemen? Two days of heat wave. It's pretty much over. Have you been all right?
So I thought I was Johnny Big Potatoes because my shed is now an office and I bought aircon for it.
Right. Is this on the allotment?
No, this is, not that far away from the new kid. But it is not powerful enough. I was 39 degrees in my shed today.
Wow. That is like a record-breaking temperature. What about you, Liam?
I loved it. It was nice. It was sunny. I know people were complaining. My wife's pregnant, so she didn't enjoy it. But it's like you go on holiday for this.
It's exactly right.
Look at my tan.
When my wife took us to Italy about 4 years ago at exactly this time of year, and it was 40 degrees in Umbria, and she was going, "This is marvellous." And today she's just been complaining all day long. I'm like, "This was free, and I haven't been expected to march up to the top of some hilltop fort." Anyway, let us take a look and see what is on the front pages of the newspapers. We have the Daily Mail, who indeed are focusing on the fires which have been created by this heatwave, and also the Conservative leadership election. Truss allies warn no dirty backroom deals. Naughty, naughty. The Daily Telegraph have the 40-degree centigrade barrier being broken for the very first time, and again evidence of the ruination that has wrought on at least one small village with the wildfires. Also, Truss closing in on Mordaunt to join Sunak in final head-to-head. The Guardian have a wake-up call. Unexpectedly, they are focusing on the climate change aspect rather than the immediate fires. UK hits highest ever temperature. Hundreds of firefighters battle blazes as new record of 40.3 degrees centigrade is reached. Getting quite exciting. Financial Times, they say, burning Britain, houses blaze in record heat, and Bailey signals half-point rate rise in battle to rein in surging prices. That would be on the Bank of England lending rate, I assume. The Daily Mirror has 40 degrees centigrade, Britain's burning. To be fair, not all of Britain is burning. In fact, the very fact that the same photograph has appeared on pretty much every front cover suggests that just one small but very unfortunate part of it has been on fire today. Wildfires sweep UK in record heat. The Times, record high of 40.3 degrees, sparks wildfires in Tinderbox, Britain, and Truss closing on Mordaunt. Deliberately unwelcome image created by the Times there. Daily Express, Britain burns in 40-degree heat, surging Truss. You can trust me to be bold and cut bills. And finally, the Daily Star have the very, very slow march of the zombies. Millions of zombie Brits staggered out of bed after the hottest ever to find it was the hottest day ever at 40.3 degrees. Those are our headlines. Let's take a look inside them. So we appear to be starting, Steve, with the Wennington Fire, I think. Is that with you? And that's with the Telegraph.
Yeah, this is a side effect of the heat wave in Wennington. It's in Essex. 100 firefighters on the scene, a row of houses on fire, 2 by the looks of it destroyed. Distressing images. We saw the clip in the news, someone saying you don't expect this to happen. Of course you don't. This is part of why it's so bad. In the story, in the Telegraph, it says distressed residents could be seen on their phones, and then others were carrying buckets of water to the Leonard's Arms, a pub nearby. I don't know how much of a drinker you have to be that you think you need to take water to a pub.
Take buckets of water to a pub, that's a good thing, isn't it? But I suppose people do react sometimes unexpectedly, don't they, when there's a sort of disaster in their midst? They don't quite know.
I think they've got water in pubs, but it is a side issue.
What, for the gin, you mean?
Yeah, to water down the beer. But, I mean, look, fires happen even when there's not a heat wave.
Yeah.
But heat waves are going to be a contributing factor on how easy it is to set fire to things. Flashpoints of liquids and dryness of solids and whatever.
And it has been pretty dry building up to it as well, of course. It's not just the heat, is it? It's the tinder, but...
And this is the thing. There would have been more fires during the one in 76. That's the reference that everyone goes to compare it to. And there were more deaths in 76. There would have been warnings in 76 as well.
Nobody had water at all in 76.
It hadn't been invented.
We discussed this previously, but I mean, no child ever left the house with a bottle of water to get through the day in 76. Maybe you lapped at a swimming pool or something, or maybe found a river.
But there was a drought, and there was a drought minister back then.
Yeah.
So I think if we would have had a minister for drought today, people would be going, "Oh, it's ridiculous. It's it's this woke government."
We had a whole song about it, Seasons in the Sun. remember that?
No, I know.
We had joy, we had fun.
That was about the drought in '76.
Well,
the drought minister.
It was about a child.
It was about drought in general.
Somebody who was dying and saying goodbye to all
Yeah, I
his
mean,
loved
I
ones.
think everybody's, calling on, action over climate change because, we've reached 40.3 degrees, which is a record high. But obviously, we got there. We've been higher than that, but in times before thermometers.
Yes.
But everybody's blaming...
In times before dinosaurs.
Yeah, everybody's blaming, anything that's bad on climate change.
So you remain sceptical in the
It's
teeth
the
of
new
this.
Brexit.
Yeah.
You remember, for a few years, everything. If there was anything going wrong, it was bloody Brexit.
Wow.
And now it's climate change. And we've got to remember that so far, climate change, I'm not denying climate change is happening. I am denying it's so much of a bad thing. Like cold weather, the British Medical Journal did a study. Cold weather kills 20 times as many people as hot weather.
I think we just have to learn to adapt to hot weather, don't we?
Yeah.
What would be bad, of course, if everyone installs air conditioning, that will put a much greater burden on the national grid and on the fuel price.
So
Just me in my shed. They're the only ones who should be allowed it.
And Prince Harry should be allowed to get a private jet wherever he wants and have as much air conditioning as he wants, and everybody else should be told not to.
Everybody else should be like that fellow I saw on the internet who spent the day in his wheelie bin, filled up to the chest, roughly with water, and he was fine because that's a fairly small amount. It's like an effective, small area.
I bet that stank.
Anyway, we should talk about the latest on the Tory leadership contest, Leo, and talk about people in bins.
Yeah.
Somebody else is in the bin now.
Well, yeah, some bad news for any true Conservatives out there. Kemi Badanok has been knocked out of the Tory leadership race, just as we were working out whether her second name is pronounced Badanok or Badanok.
Or Bad Enoch.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised the Guardian haven't run with that yet. But yeah, it's a shame because she was a genuine Conservative. I think she'd have galvanised Tory voters. She was for free speech, free enterprise and low tax. Anybody remember when the Tories stood for those things? So going into the final run, we've got Rishi Sunak, who stands for high tax. Well, for us anyway, not for his family, who managed to dodge or avoid, not dodge, avoid.
Yes.
A lot of tax, and he's also got some recognised disdain for the working class, as I do, but I hide it. Liz Truss as well, so she'll probably pick up some votes from Kemi. But
She does seem to be regarded as the main candidate of the right now, but I just don't find that entirely convincing. I don't know. I think she's. Everyone says she is a ridiculous kind of LARPing MAGA Thatcher wannabe. Even during the last debate, or the one I saw, she was wearing a literal. It was almost like a child's. I'm going to come up to World Book Day as Maggie Thatcher.
Yeah, but she forgot. She forgot to copy Thatcher's gravitas or delivery.
She needs to learn how to speak like that.
Yeah. And then there's Penny Mordaunt, who is probably the wokest candidate. Stood for, when she was Equalities Minister, tried to bring in self-ID and then denied that she tried to bring in self-ID.
This is the thing that I find worrying about her. I feel everyone is buffeted slightly by the trans thing a little bit. It's understandable if you walk it back, if you explain yourself. But she has tried to evade any kind of responsibility as well. And that doesn't sit very well with her other great projection, which is the fact that she was raised in Portsmouth and fell in love with the Navy, with the country and with the Tory party when Thatcher sent the task force to the Falklands.
Yeah, and she's a naval reservist.
Yes.
So, although she hasn't seen a lot of action. So.
What are your take on the candidates, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised that Kemi's run's ended. I think it's been a good run for her, though, because most people hadn't heard of her before, I would say. This was always the first outing to test to get your name out there. So she was never going to make it through to the final. I think the more interesting stories about whether, because loads of theories are developing about lending votes to make sure that Liz Truss gets through because Rishi thinks he stands a better chance against Liz Truss. Oh, imagine that. Politicians doing something slightly underhanded.
But Kemi will definitely, she will leverage the votes that she has in her gift in order to secure a place in cabinet now. It'd be interesting to see where she might end up in the Exchequer. I wouldn't have thought that would suit her, but hopefully somewhere where she can. Certainly if it is Truss who gets in, where she can apply some kind of proper, as you say, proper dry conservatism to the project.
And whoever wins, we're either going to have the third Tory female Prime Minister or the first person of colour Prime Minister.
Amazing.
So
and meanwhile,
delivered by the Conservatives, who everybody
the Labour
says
Party
is racist.
is led by this like a sort of potato-headed...
the whitest man. Even now, in 40.3 degree heat, he's still, opaque white.
Absolutely marvellous. On to Wednesday's Mail now. Pay packets have taken a bit of a hit this year. I don't think that's news there, but...
Yeah, so they say in the Daily Mail, they say pay packets are suffering a record fall of 2.8% as inflation inflation runs rampant. So this is slightly misleading because earnings are actually going up, but not at the same rate as inflation. So official figures show that total earnings were growing at an annual rate of 6.2%. While regular pay was rising at 4.3%, whereas inflation is running much higher. I can't find the exact amount, but the thing is, I mean, this inflation should be a temporary thing. So it's caused by, the energy crisis, which should eventually be resolved if our politicians pull their finger out, and also the supply chain, which should be resolved as well.
I think the supply chain thing is the bit that is because everyone is assuming it's partly to do with the net zero attempts that's obviously driving up fuel prices. It's obviously to do with the war partly, but there are much more sort of nuanced, complex, intractable issues with China's...
globalisation. And also we're sort of disentangling ourselves. Countries at the moment are disentangling themselves from the global network because, as we've seen, you can't rely on Russia, you can't rely on Saudi Arabia and China and autocratic regimes because they're run by bad people who then leverage that for evil.
What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I think the extra levies for green issues would have been there before we had the story about the cost of living crisis. So it's still too high, and I don't think we should be paying it during a time like this. But that won't be the increase that we're noticing. The spike is from other causes. In this article, they say that even with all this, that unemployment has gone down, and they're surprised. Why would you be surprised? There were already too many opportunities and not enough people applying for them, and then a good reason to need extra work. So, of course, unemployment, more people are going to find work.
I mean, whether or not it worked, but a big part of the idea of Brexit was that you would clear out a lot of people who were willing to work for very low amounts of money, and so that you would give a bit of a boost to the job market. But that was always bound to put the prices up, wasn't it? And that was bound to put the prices up for food in particular, because they were always going to be part of the labour market for that. It is extraordinary, though, how the short memories people have, and you get warned about these things. You go, well, OK, fine, we will send all the strawberry pickers home, but you will have to then pick the strawberries, and that will probably be... And they go, fine, yes, we'll do that. But, oh, no, strawberries have gone up.
But strawberries are still pretty cheap. The thing that's going up faster, and is over the last few decades has risen at just astronomical levels, is housing. And this has coincided with immigration, which I don't understand, because we had nearly a million immigrants to the UK last year, and assuming each one of them builds 2 houses, we should have loads of houses.
Well,
so, are they not building houses?
That is
are they
part of the
living in
planning
houses
regulation
instead?
that they won't allow them to.
Maybe if everyone who comes to the UK has to bring a semi-detached house with them, maybe that'll solve the housing crisis.
Float across the channel on a flat-pack house.
Yeah,
that would be a perfect.
I
think, to be fair, I mean, I don't know whether immigration will have an effect on housing, but what's more sinister, I think, genuinely, is that they don't include the price of houses in the inflationary index. You know, so you have no way of factoring that in.
It's an absolute lie, isn't it? The inflation's a lie because it doesn't actually include what you're going to have to pay for.
Although this one does. The CPI includes housing costs as well.
Oh, that one does. OK, all right. I rode back on that then, all the way back to France. Wennington's Guardian next. And a troubling report has been released on the Labour Party, Steve.
Yes, the Ford report looked into anti-Semitism and said that the Labour Party were using it as a factional weapon. Both sides using it. They called both sides toxic under Jeremy Corbyn. So I suppose the best way of phrasing it is that they realised that an accusation of anti-Semitism were not only a way of dealing with anti-Semitism, but also a pretty good way of attacking Jeremy Corbyn. So who knows which... Basically, not all of the accusations were done simply to try and root out anti-Semitism. The report also says Corbyn was notably silent. He refused to be interviewed in it, which is bizarre, isn't it? Because you think, part of this is hard to defend. Why would you be in a position where you think, well, yes, I want to say that anti-Semitism is bad, but not too loudly. I wouldn't want to upset who? The anti-Semites? It should be really easy to pick a side on this debate. But they basically, Jeremy Corbyn brought out the split within the Labour Party even more than it's normally it bubbles under, and part of the weaponry was accusations.
It's been an historical thing within the Labour Party. I've known people for 30 or 40 years when I was first sort of aware of people who had political opinions that Palestine was like a major issue for them in a way that I didn't fully understand. And I suppose an amount of elbow room, latitude to criticise Israel has been an important part of the Labour Party for a very long time. Predates Corbyn's career, I think.
Although anti-Semitism predates Israel as well.
That's true, yes.
I mean, and the left hate successful minorities. and you can see it in the Tory leadership race. Some of the stuff that's Femi Olawale or Dr. Shola Moss Shogbamimu, like the sort of racist rhetoric they've come out, because they're race-baiting grifters who depend on this concept of racial inequality to make a career.
In America as well, of course. It's exactly the same thing. Any black politician who supports Republican or Conservative views in America is immediately regarded as all kinds of unpleasant terms used. Yeah.
And the electoral arithmetic for the Labour Party under Corbyn, so 85% of British Muslims voted for Labour under Corbyn. And I'm not saying that that's, there's any sort of long-standing enmity between Jews and Muslims, but I mean...
People of the book. People of the book, Lee.
That could have been a dog whistle, slightly.
Yeah, you never know. Wednesday's Mirror now, more on the grooming gang phenomenon, Leo. This is a specific interview, I think.
Yeah, so this is, I mean, there's not been much come out about Telford. So the Telford inquiry, it's a huge, like grooming, child sexual exploitation and murder. The pregnant girl was burnt to death with her family in her house by one of the abusers. I mean, just the most horrific crimes, I've read about. It's horrific. But they've just been they were in the paper for half an hour and then they've just been sort of swept under the carpet. So it's good to see it actually getting some column space. So the interview, one of the victims, she says she was raped more than 1,500 times before she turned 20. And if there's any Guardian readers or Labour MPs watching and wondering why people are upset about this, try to imagine that instead of working class girls being raped, it's middle-class women getting a hand on their knee. And yeah, it's horrific. She was the way she was subtly groomed. She was started as a sort of drug mule and given cash and cigarettes, and she didn't realise she was a victim. She didn't recognise it as abuse until she was an adult.
There was a very sinister detail I saw when I was reading it, that apparently they used to use these scrunches that they tie their ponytails up in, and that these were used, they could be slit open and wraps of cocaine or whatever shoved into them, and then
they shoved cocaine in worse places than that. Yeah. But I mean, it was highly organised, this abuse, and tied in with the drugs trade. And one of the difficulties prosecuting these, apart from the police and authorities not wanting to look racist, is that it's difficult to get the victims to recognise themselves as victims and testify against people who they don't realise are abusing them, because they're the young kids. And she says she didn't realise until she was in her 20s what she'd been through, even though it's so horrific. Reading the details, gang rape and stuff, she didn't realise it was.
But it is, without wishing to go to, I suppose it's an easily readily available cliche, but it's a little bit like they always talk with the climate crisis about boiling frogs. I don't even know if it's true. You know what I'm saying? But you bring the temperature up gradually. It's a little bit like that, isn't it? You just gradually increase the outrages, but because the kid has learned to think of you as somebody who is welcoming them into an adult world that appears a bit more glamorous early on, and then you go, and of course, the corollary of you hanging out with us adults is you're expected to provide sexual favours. It can be presented almost as if it's this is what you wanted.
A transactional or part of a relationship.
This is all part of it.
Yeah.
That's when the responsibility of the state steps in, and the police should spot this. You can't expect children to work this out, but you can expect police to work this out. You can also expect police to not be afraid of looking racist by making an accusation, because no one likes to be called racist, but I tell you what's worse, what happened to them.
And as somebody else pointed out on this show, and I thought was a fair point, which I hadn't really considered before, the police don't seem to be that bothered about being regarded as racist when there's like a vastly higher number of young black kids getting stopped and searched for knives.
Well, even then they do take steps to try and even out. I've been stopped and searched, presumably
well, you do look dodgy, to be fair.
I guess I do have a tan, but yeah, they say. I mean, we talk about systemic racism. I'd argue that this shows that the systemic racism in some parts of British society and British authority structures is against white working class girls.
I think that's a perfectly fair point. Well, that is it for part one. Coming up in the second half, the UK is going to the moon. Russia has a soft spot for Scotland, but not for child-free lifestyles. We'll be discussing what that particular euphemistic phrase means after the break. See you shortly.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Simon Evans, Leo Kearse and Steve N. Allen. Let's crack on with our second part, in which the news achieves a degree of levity perhaps missing from the first 20 minutes. Exciting news from Wednesday's Telegraph now, and the UK is only 60 years behind on this particular endeavour.
Well, the next moon landing programme could involve British astronauts and scientists after the head of NASA flew in for discussions with the UK Space Agency. So apparently by 2025, they're going to establish a permanent base on the moon and send humans back to the lunar surface, and then by 2030 they're going to have their first grooming gangs.
And we can start her looks at Russia.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is Russia is going to be involved.
Oh.
So. Effort, and although there's tensions with Russia over Ukraine, this forced other space agencies to cancel missions. The NASA guy said that he's called Mr. Nelson said relations with Roscosmos, which is the Russian space agency, are still good and not impacting joint projects. I think this is because the International Space Agency is heavily dependent on Russian modules for cargo. I don't know if it's the Soyuz.
Yeah, and I suppose the moon is a less contentious breadbasket and source of natural mineral wealth than Ukraine is, possibly. Less part of the national myth.
Until artillery.
Neither of you are old enough to remember the moon landings, I imagine. I was 4. I do remember it. I was carried next door. I don't know if we didn't have a telly whether next door just had a better one, but we went next door to watch it.
Well, you just make a lot of noise.
I can't remember. It didn't get celebrated. But it was mid-July, wasn't it? I think maybe July 9th, something like that. 1969, yeah. And our next door neighbour, I promise you, was Russian. We didn't make a big fuss about it at the time, but he was like, "It's a fix. It's not real. It's
in my country
has been put in studio because Americans are losing space race." But genuine story. Anyway, well, that's good news. I hope we do get an astronaut on the moon. That would cheer everyone up, I think.
Well, there's a few people.
World's most powerful passports. The day has finally arrived where our great nation can stand shoulder to shoulder with other countries and measure itself. Who has got the most impressive one, in your view, Steve?
It's not in my view, it's the view of the Henley Passport Index. Thank heavens there's an index of passports.
Henley?
Yeah, without that, how would we know which is the better passport?
Where they have the rowing regatta.
It might not be the same one, I don't know, actually. And it's just great to have this information because, everyone gets to pick which passport they've got. So this is really useful waste of our time.
So who has the most powerful passport?
It's not us, we've dropped. Japan. They've measured it in terms of which countries this passport will get you in there without paperwork, basically.
Right, OK.
Japan, top of the list, but we're down at 6th, joint 6th. With America and where's the other one? France. Oh, sorry, France, Ireland, Portugal, and UK. Number 7.
The EU must all have the same, surely, no? Does it not work like that?
I don't quite understand the details, but Germany and Spain are doing better than some others.
That's weird, isn't it? You would think if it was the EU, it was the EU.
But then it's other countries that you can get into, like they might have rules and restrictions, but for you, we'll let you straight in, sir, that kind of deal.
So the top 3 are Japan, Singapore and South Korea. There is a bit of a theme going on there, isn't there, basically?
Yeah. And down at the bottom, Afghanistan. But again, none of this is surprising, really. We kind of knew that we wouldn't have as much access.
It's sort of it's like a directly inverse proportional relationship with football hooliganism, essentially, isn't it? I would imagine.
So
I don't understand.
Japan, South Korea and Singapore, no football hooligans. Very, very powerful passports. You can go anywhere because you're not expected to be violent. You can be trusted not to get drunk.
Afghanistan have got good football hooligans.
Yeah,
the Taliban just a firm that got out of hand.
Essentially,
right? I mean, I guess Millwall would be
intercity.
Millwall's firm would do a lot better with AK-47s that they've been given by Joe Biden.
That kind of behaviour, that's what they're talking about, I think, isn't it? Rather than diplomatic relationships.
Yeah, there's a slight kink in the stats as well because they're comparing it to the last couple of years as well. But restrictions, people weren't allowed to go anywhere. We were particularly not favoured because we were an early adopter straight after Italy, weren't we? But so, look, that's not even worth considering those. And we knew that we wouldn't be going to quite as many places without filling out a visa because, well, we knew that when we voted for a change.
Yeah.
So, again, this is not particularly surprising that we've gone down.
The gap is not huge. There's 193 countries will let Japan in without a visa, and we're on 187. Now, I don't know which 6 countries we are not allowed to enter, but I've yet to encounter.
Well, imagine Russia. Russia's on that list now. But yeah, you do notice it when you're travelling for comedy. So, doing tours, going around Europe, it used to be so easy. You could just go anywhere and perform. And, I mean, you still can, you just don't tell the government. But going to Indonesia, like performing over there, like the guy had to get a government official to come and meet me at the airport and fill in all these forms. So, you had to pay for a guy's time for the day, pay a fee and all the rest of it.
Yeah, tiresome, that's true. Mind you, I wouldn't go to Indonesia for comedy anyway. That's just me. But
no, it's great. I performed on the American embassy because it was free from the Islamic speech laws.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Because it does affect. There's a comedy club in Kuala Lumpur, in Malaysia. They got shut down just 5 days ago.
By means of a kind of fatwa kind of mentality?
Basically, yeah. So somebody blasphemed against Islam on stage.
This next one from Wednesday's Mail is sure to delight Nicola Sturgeon, Leo, so this has come to you as well.
Yeah, so Vladimir Putin's chief propagandist has threatened to destroy England with a Satan II rocket, which, I mean, they talk up these rockets as if he's spoken before, as if, it'll create a tidal wave that'll wipe out the whole Europe. No, it's a nuclear explosion. It's bad, but it can't take out a whole country. It could probably take out Swindon, but that's not entirely a bad thing. But so he says he's going to destroy England with a giant Satan II rocket, but leave Scotland, Wales, and the island of Ireland unharmed.
That's quite a task you set Hadrian's Wall, isn't it? Keep out a nuclear blast.
and exactly map the contours. I mean, it's very clever though because Scotland, like Putin, is very clever at sowing division amongst his enemies, and Scottish nationalists they're very authoritarian, so they'd love a Putin-style government, and they hate England just like Putin. And and also the SNP, the Scottish National Party, started off in league with Nazi Germany because they hated England so much they were willing to collude with England's enemies.
Who is this? Scotland?
Scottish National Party.
Is that when what's his name, the number 2? He arrived in Scotland, didn't he, in order to plead his case on behalf of Hitler?
Yeah, that's right.
Hess. What was it? Rudolf Hess, was it? Rudolf Hess, and he's the one who was the last prisoner in Spandau. This is before your time as well, Steve.
I missed it all.
Back a bit now. Rudolf Hess flew in a light aircraft and landed, and I think
he didn't use a reindeer.
He spoke to the Duke of Argyll. No, he wasn't magical. He was an actual. He wasn't Father Hess. He was an actual Nazi. He was the one who basically wrote down Mein Kampf. He was in jail with Hitler, and he took the dictation. Yeah, he was.
Oh, is that why they call Hitler a dictator?
Yeah, exactly. And that term now has been widely abused ever since. Anyway, I quite like this chap. He is hilarious. I tell you what I would use, though, if I was going to use a Satan rocket to defeat the West. There's a massive rock in the Canary Islands that apparently one day is going to topple and will create a tsunami that will wipe out New York.
I think that's just a...
That's where I'd aim for.
Daily Express headline. That is not a real thing.
This is great. It's a propagandist. It's like getting a bad tweet. It's just nice that we're winding them up. And there's another propagandist in the conversation saying, look at Liz Truss, look at Boris Johnson, both of them are the personification of many years of British policy. I think that's going to be my opening monologue on Ministry of Defence.
He is perfect. You should get him over. He's just the Howard Stern of Moscow, isn't he? Wednesday's Times now, and it seems Russia subscribes to the idea that God made Adam and Eve, not Vladimir and Stravinsky.
Well, they want to ban discussion of child-free lifestyles. And I mean, yeah, it's
the discussion of the propaganda. It's a sort of Section 28. Isn't it?
It is, and there's a whole lot of that homophobia into this story. But they're trying to make it look like it's an issue to do with population. The Stats Service over there has predicted that Russia's population could decline by up to 12 million people in the next 2 decades. And this was before they sent a lot of them to go and get shot.
Yeah.
So the solution, don't talk about not having kids. That'll do it.
Well, the fact is, I mean, to play devil's advocate here, of course, but it's happening to every country in Europe. The same, infertility crisis. The difference is we have immigrants who want to come and live in this country to bolster it and to overwhelm the decline of fertility. But it is actually happening. And I will even go further. I do think that there has been some degree to which people have gone, that actually looks quite fun not having kids, because heterosexual couples all used to have kids. And, when it was shameful to be gay and you were like the naked civil servant, supping a cold cup of coffee on the Gray's Inn Road or something, and it looked a bit miserable and you were sort of hemmed in by society's oppressive forces. Nobody wanted to live like that. But now, clearly, being gay is the most fun anyone can have. And you can sort of ape that if you just decide not to have kids.
Well, funny if you say ape, because there is a risk of monkeypox. But, I mean, the sort of fertility rate dropping in Western Europe, I mean, this is a huge problem. We're at 1.7 at the moment. That's the replacement. We need 2.1 to maintain the population.
And it's comparable to Russia, isn't it?
And it's, economists say, so we need lots of immigrants. But the reason people aren't having children is mainly because they can't afford a house. Exactly. So if you bring in lots of immigrants, it doesn't make house prices go down. And then you're sort of replacing our population, our culture, our life.
Well, there are two reasons. There's partly that, but also, based on historical fact and historical record, it's because it's easier not to make mistakes now. Most kids are mistakes, historically speaking. Right. Most kids are failure of contraceptive devices that didn't work properly or whatever and can't be rectified after the event, or just, drunken lust in which you don't take proper precautions. All of those things being ironed out now. So we have this idea that in the past people went, do you know what I'd really like now? 8 or 9 children.
So we need to encourage recklessness.
Absolutely.
And of course, new arrivals to our shores have more children. So Islam is going to be the biggest religion in the UK if current demographic trends continue.
Well, it's the only religion in the UK already, isn't it? I think it's the only one
by 2050, which is, I mean, that's a startling. If you'd have told people in the 90s, what they were voting for with, Blair's globalisation and open borders, then, people would have said you're a far-right alarmist.
Our best defence against Islam is not Christianity. It is shopping, isn't it? It's shopping and alcohol. Those are our best defences.
Because they don't have that in Dubai.
No, they don't. Well, not really. Not alcohol. They have shopping.
Because Dubai is based on shopping.
If more people buy more alcohol, we'll also solve the problem of having kids, I guess. That's the other thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is it, But, nature has its way. Part 2 is at an end. Fear not, in Part 3 we'll be discussing the 3 pillars of life: health, music and death. Other life philosophies may be available. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
And welcome back to Headliners. No fatwa so far. Let's see if we can get through to midnight without one. I'm Simon Evans, joined by Leo Kearse and Steve N. Allen tonight. On to Wednesday's Metro, and a topic all three of us are incredibly passionate about. This is Love Island.
That's right. So Love Island, it's not a real island, by the way. It's just a TV show. But
Not real love either.
Domestic, yeah, it should be called Lust Island. Lust TV.
Lust Peninsula.
Lust TV
The archipelago of... Never mind.
Anyway, domestic violence charity Refuge has expressed concern over the misogynistic and abusive behaviours in recent episodes of Love Island. They've said nothing about Telford, interestingly. Absolutely zero about grooming gangs.
Are you sure about that?
Absolutely certain. I checked their Twitter, I checked their website, I did a deep search, even the CEO's Twitter. No mention of Telford, no mention of grooming gangs. Very little mention of grooming at all. But anyway, so apparently Luca Bish, who's on Love Island, blew up at partner Gemma Owen while accusing her of flirting with Billy Brown. I don't know who.
What is Luca Bish?
Luca Bish is a type of person.
Right.
And Ekinsu, oh God, I think this is a Turkish name. It's very complicated to pronounce. Ekinsu Kulkuloglu was called a liar by David St. Clementi during explosive rows. So these problematic scenes...
Love is blowing up and explosive. I mean, it's quite a sort of concussive experience watching this show.
Would you like to see Jihad Island?
Just people randomly exploding.
So the problematic scenes caught the attention of Women's Aid, who have addressed...
Sorry, can I just go back? Is Coco Lodge a person or a location on the island?
Oh, Coco Lodge is a... Oh, Coco Lodge is a person.
It's a person, wow.
Yeah. So Coco Lodge...
sounds like a sexual position as well.
Coco Lodge...
Oh, dear.
Coco Lodge was kissed in Casa Amor. So Casa Amor sounds like a person, but it's a building.
It's a building.
And Coco Lodge sounds like a building, but is a person.
It's an extraordinary programme. I had no idea. I can't believe that the Refuge... Oh, no, sorry, that's Ruth Davison. She is...
Yeah.
Is that the ex-Scottish...
No.
No, OK, different one. Right, OK.
No.
Well, I have to say I feel some sympathy with somebody called Ruth Davison trying to understand any of what you've just described.
Well, I've got more sympathy with Coco Lodge. It's like being called Travelodge or something.
Sympathy. It sounds lip-smacking. We kick off the next one. Scientists want to put gruesome cigarette-style picture warnings onto chocolate. Is this right? Is this with you, Steve?
Yeah, the idea is it'll stop us being so fat because, let's be honest, those pictures and other measures have reduced the level of smoking. So let's throw out the idea of putting gruesome pictures on foods, snack foods and whatever. For example, a photo of someone getting open heart surgery. It's got to nip in.
I think they're going to show us a picture they've got, and there is one.
Oh, delicious, isn't it?
So this contains excess calories.
Yeah.
Which cause obesity. What is the definition of an excess calorie?
Well, I mean, more than you need, but it's difficult to know that they're in there.
There's not going to be... It's not going to be more... You get 3,000 calories a day if that's not got that in.
I take your point, but in general, if you're eating a Mars bar or something like that, it tends to not be, I'm only getting my... 2,500...
What they call empty calories, is that the idea?
The Cambridge University have worked... Because I would have said, you can put that on the side and I'm going to eat the chocolate anyway. Because I don't eat chocolate because I think it's healthy for me. No. I eat it because I fundamentally... I've never been happy.
Trying to drown out the emptiness.
The only way that I can feel joy in this otherwise empty life is a little bit of chocolate in my mouth. But it turns out... it didn't feel as good as chocolate. 7 out of 10 people actually did... Given a choice, opt for fruit rather than chocolate if it had a picture of someone getting surgery on the side.
Right. The fruit on the pineapple?
No, the picture was on the chocolate.
OK.
The other idea would be put pictures on fruit of someone looking really great naked. And then maybe...
The only thing they do is pumpkins, which get carved once a year, and that's usually quite gruesome.
That puts you off, if anything. My favourite thing about this is, obviously, there was a sample, a group where they had no pictures on either.
Yeah.
And more people took the chocolate. If you've got a picture of surgery. People go away from chocolate. They also tried it with pictures of dead dogs that have been hit by, like, roadkill.
Oh, my goodness. A dog that is dead and abandoned. And it actually says that.
What's that got to do with chocolate?
I mean, this is what scientists do, though. Like, we need 3 groups. What are we going to do with the other one? Dead dogs.
That's a dairy milk.
So, sorry, that's like a placebo or whatever, is it? Is that
that's a Labrador.
Little control.
A Labrador.
Yeah. And, I mean,
it's just a lab... Never mind.
But you know,
science
I'm
lab.
just trying to understand, is that picture put onto a packet to see whether it puts people off? It's like an experimental
and it's put me off eating dog. So,
but I did look through this thing, and this is what does annoy me. I understand. We all understand. You eat a Mars bar, you know that you're not doing yourself a power of good, but it might cheer you up. Exactly.
People don't know that,
through the day. Well, maybe some people do, some don't. I don't know. And yeah, of course, if you make it a big part of your diet, you're probably going to end up the wrong shape. But then it says, what should a balanced diet look like? And it goes, base meals on potatoes, bread, rice, pasta. No, those are all terrible.
Yeah.
You should be eating loads of meat, fish, eggs and cheese.
Eat that dog.
And a bit of fresh fruit and veg to just to, get it moving through the colon. That is literally all you need. You don't need any of these high starchy, these refined carbohydrates. There's no difference between potatoes, bread and a Mars bar.
But I think it is a good idea to, get people to cut back on chocolate. Because, I mean, much as I've loved the warm weather, people are wearing more revealing clothes. And what it's revealed is that we are a nation of land whales.
Yeah.
And it's kind of
You're quite well. We had a holiday in Crete recently, and the British with their tops off on the beaches.
Yeah.
People say, I feel ashamed to be British now, and they usually mean Brexit, but that's when I feel it. And also chocolate itself in the heat.
Just melts.
Either does it, So, okay.
There's this movement for body positivity, which is basically making excuses and encouraging people to be fat, and it's ridiculous.
It's a lie. It's another series of lies. You're absolutely right. Minimum pricing on the same sort of subject now. This is trying to slow down drinkers rather than chocoholics.
So this is interesting. They've done a new study on minimum pricing. So in Scotland, for example, I think the minimum cost when you go and buy alcohol, it used to just be super cheap, and now. They've made a minimum unit pricing, so if you buy a can of lager that's got 3 units or whatever, I don't know how many units is in a can of lager, but it's going to be
a couple of hundred, I think. Oh, units.
Sorry, so it's going to be
around one.
So it's going to be like a minimum of like £2 rather than previously it would be £1. And previous research showed that the policy has been associated with large reductions in consumption among heavier drinkers, but this new study shows that it's not reducing consumption in young, more deprived, or the heaviest drinking men. So they're the people that the policy was designed to target. They do the most harmful drinking. And in Scotland as well, it's also led to people using illegal drugs more. So if you want to get blotto because you wake up, you realise you're in Glasgow, you can't afford to go and get drunk on alcohol, so you've got to buy some heroin.
And then what happens is, of course, you take the heroin or the speed or whatever, and then, of course, that reduces your inhibitions, which is what you take it for, and then you think, sorry, I'm going to spend all the rest of my money on booze anyway. I mean, this is the great genius of booze, isn't it? Is that it overcomes its own objections. Early on you think, I'm going to have a glass, and then that glass says, have another glass. Yeah. By the time you've had a couple of glasses, you're on a roll, and it's very, very difficult to impose your willpower on that situation.
Yeah, but that's just normal, everyday, common or garden willpower. I think for those people who are addicted, of course, this was never going to work because drugs are also expensive. People seem to pay for those.
Yeah, absolutely true, and also they can get you in jail, and they don't care. This next one, call me cynical, sounds a little bit like a well-funded marketing campaign, but maybe there's some truth to it. Steve. Marmite.
Vitamins in Marmite can calm anxiety. This is according to a new piece of research, which, I think if you want to feel better, eat lots of chocolate, but we've covered that. It's B vitamins.
Marmite's the same colour. You just paint that a bit on the outside of your mask.
Quite the same, is it? But it's B vitamins that are good for you. They can mess with your brain chemistry. We've always known that B12 deficiencies, one of the symptoms is guilt.
Right.
But then again...
Is that in a hangover? Because guilt is always accompanies a hangover.
There's a hormonal thing in hangovers, and one of the first hormones that starts to level itself early doors is testosterone, which is why it's... How to say this delicately? The next morning, sometimes one might feel a little more amped.
I remember that. There's a funny thing. There's also the immediate self-loathing that comes in immediately after the culmination of the inflagrant. You know what I'm saying? Ejaculation almost immediately leaves. There's a French word, tristesse, is it, or something? That sort of slight sadness. There's just
what have I done again?
What have I done to the Cocoa Lodge?
Schopenhauer said that at the moment of copulation, the devil's laughter is heard because you've been tricked into it against your own. Again, because most children are born accidentally.
Why is this headline written like a cigarette pack warning? I don't understand that.
It's Marmite. You need to cut back on your Marmite.
Stop smoking.
So Marmite can actually reduce anxiety and possibly guilt.
It's got B12, and this study actually said that you didn't get any improvement from B12, but probably because you feel guilty because you just filled your face with toast and Marmite. B6 can help improve your brain chemistry, and that can sort out anxiety. But you're right, I don't know why this isn't an advert for vitamin tablets. How are we suddenly going to have Marmite?
There is a funny thing about vitamin tablets. Apparently, most of the good effects are better if you don't take them in pill form, and nobody quite knows why.
Right. Well, I think this is because it came from a press release from Marmite.
From Marmite. Listen, Marmite is a byproduct of the brewing industry, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like most of us.
Like my career.
OK, this is scientists working on a drug now, Leo, that will rival giant tortoises for lifespans.
Yeah, so scientists are working on a drug that lets you live for 200 years. They're not very clear on how far along the process of making this drug they are. They might just be at the idea stage.
Funding.
But they're looking for funding. But basically, the science behind it is human aging is hurried along by zombie cells. So scientifically, they're known as senescent cells. And these cells stop dividing over our lifespan, accumulate inside our bodies, and release compounds that speed up aging. So they've developed these drugs. They've tested on mice that extend the lifespan and the healthy lifespan of the mice as well. But the trouble is, as with other things that they test on mice, we're not mice.
It doesn't scale up, does it?
Doesn't always work.
I read a fantastic book last year called Scale by a guy called Geoffrey West about how things operate differently at different scales. Mouse, great, human beings, whales, cities compared to villages and so on. And it is really interesting how certain things that they think... You can test to a degree for sort of toxicity on mice.
Right.
But in certain other regards, it just doesn't map onto. You might get an extra 6 months or something.
But what's the solution to that? To start testing on humans in labs?
Well, maybe just
China's
accept
doing
that our lifespan is a natural limit and it's not actually a bad one.
Well, I thought you'd be more worried than that, Simon.
You think so? I'm zeroing on the end. All I want to do is make sure that you can live healthily right up to the... You know what I mean? That for me, have a guillotine at the end of it rather than a sort of 10 or 15 years of dribbling into the sort of unrecognised face of your relatives. But anyway, that's... I was on a sort of financial panel a few years ago, just providing, the laughs, obviously. There was a billionaire on there called Jim Mellon, who is, I think, a British billionaire. He's done a lot of great, very successful investing. And his two big tips for the future were immortality and lab-grown meat. He said those are the two things, because kids hate killing animals now, but we will need some sort of decent protein, and there's still some way to go with that. Google have got a massive, I think it's called the Gilgamesh Project, which is within Google's headquarters in California, where they are working on immortality. So, there is a lot of...
Another one's Craig Ventnor, is it, as well? The genome guy?
Yeah, absolutely. And people write books about things that you can do, in order to extend the telomeres and what have you. But I think live like a mighty river. It remains my watchword.
Don't let Russian tanks cross you.
No, exactly.
If the issue is that kids don't like killing animals, we're not going to need kids if we're all immortal. So they're going to be out of the window.
Exactly.
Also, our kids
we can enjoy steaks. Telegraph now, and a question for the ages, Steve.
Are phones ruining live music?
I think that's it, yeah.
Yeah, they are. There you go. This is Bob Dylan banned them. There's been various artists. Billie Eilish encourages them. But, I can only really go to this from a point of view of a stand-up comedian. You see someone get their phone out, it's an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
Firstly, you don't want evidence of what's about to go down. There's a certain agreement in a comedy club. You've decided to enter that room, so you've made an agreement that you're going to listen to whatever we're said. You take that out of context and print it in a newspaper the week later, we look like terrible people. But I do think there is this whole thing of not living in the moment. The same people who will turn up to a music thing and film it will waffle on about mindfulness on their Instagram. So do one or the other. Be in the moment, put the phone down and live the experience.
I remember the nativity plays. My kids are growing up now, but I remember we went to go and see those, and people were holding iPads up to film nativity plays.
So the whole row can't
past
see.
it. It's like a wall of screens. If you're not going to watch it now, when is going to be a better time than now? This is a really precious moment. And you go to screens. We went to see Guns N' Roses recently. It was an awful gig because the sound was terrible in the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And I don't know whether it was the band's fault or the stadium's fault, but to be honest, I wasn't enjoying it anyway, so I wasn't that lost. So I was watching it more as a sort of social experiment anyway. As soon as any famous song comes out, everyone would hold up their phone.
Yeah.
And as soon as one they didn't know, they'd just sort of sit there, wait, it was those were their two modes. Oh, Sweet Child of Mine, up comes the phone. And then he played November Rain, and they didn't record it, they all held their phones up with the light on in the way that they used to do with lighters. Do you remember that when people used to...
Yeah.
It was like your phone was just your only means of communicating your response to the whole thing.
Well, they do this thing now. There's a company called Yonder, and they put your phone in a pouch. You keep your phone with you in the pouch, so you've still got it. You don't need to worry about it. I know the guy who runs it, Charlie Lovell, and he gave me free tickets for Dave Chappelle.
I think it's a good
hope
deal.
He gives me more.
Queen's Greatest Hits, meanwhile, is Britain's biggest selling album ever. That's
that news.
That's slightly depressing. It's like 40 years old.
It is. It's very also much. It's that Alan Partridge line of what's your favourite
best of the Beatles.
I think it was Phil Collins. What's your favourite Phil Collins album? Greatest Hits or something like that. So it's that Queen's Greatest Hits, biggest selling album. Great. They've also looked at the number of times individual tracks were streamed. The most streamed track, Bohemian Rhapsody, 240 million streams. My favourite bit of the article is Brian May said, "Thank you, we appreciate it." It in that sentence, I imagine, the money. And no wonder he can afford to go and save badgers all the time. It's just, the money's coming.
They hit the sweet spot, though, Queen, didn't they? I don't know whether anyone would say they were the greatest band or even one of the top 10 bands of all time, but they're like a part of everyone's culture, childhood.
Yeah.
You know, you get Simon Pegg uses Don't Stop Me Now in his zombie films, Wayne's World used Bohemian Rhapsody. The Beatles, obviously, an extraordinary band, extraordinary outpouring of creativity, extraordinary ambition and advances were made, but it was at a time when the music just feels a bit old now, doesn't it? It does feel, you know, whereas Queen, it feels like it's glossy enough to be on MTV, but it's got nostalgia as well.
Yeah, they were big right at the time when, you know, CDs and everything were coming out, so, you know, they could sell lots of records, which you can't do now. You don't really get huge bands anymore. But does Brian May save badgers because he looks like one?
It's a self-protection thing.
Terrified that his wife will be cold one day. OK, and the next one we have is Japanese offices bringing in sleep boxes so workers can get a bit of an extra nap.
Yeah, this is a terrifying vision of the future that the World Economic Forum have got planned for us. The Japanese firms, they've come up with this solution. They call it an ingenious solution. I think it's incredibly scary to the country's problem of exhausted white-collar workers by fitting nap boxes in offices which enable them to sleep standing up.
Standing up, extraordinary, like a bat.
I've done that before. I've done that at work. I've done it. I used to do night shift in a petrol station, and you can sleep wedged into a corner.
I was going to say, did you have a prop or something? Did you have a...
No. You can just sort of like I mean, it's not obviously it's not the best sleep you can get. No. But so this holds you. It props you, holds your head, your knees, and rear in order to stay upright and avoid falling over, and also so you can do head, shoulders, knees, and
I mean,
toes
the
at the
one
same
place
time.
I would like to see improved upright sleeping technology is on trains, obviously, and planes, I guess, as well. All I always think you just need a sort of band around your head to hold it firmly to the headrest.
But because of the flow of blood and lymphatic fluids, you shouldn't be upright when you sleep. We're not designed to sleep upright. We're not cows, so you should be lying down.
Wow.
You could solve that if that plane started to plummet.
Yeah.
As long as it all flies on a parabola, because then
What do you think, though? I haven't asked you, what do you think about Japanese office sleeping culture? Is it a terrible... Because they're saying 80 hours of office extra overtime a month. And we often hear that Japan has cracked it in terms of productivity.
Yeah,
this sounds like
that's how you do it. I mean, no one should be worked to the level where they have to sleep in a pod. But also, I do think the world's got it wrong about places to sleep. If you leave the house, you can't get a kip anywhere. I mean, if you're in London, Circle Line is your best bet. Just let it go around a bit. Without that, there's not
Flat on your back in the middle of Soho Square with a Cure album in your headphones under the sun. That was fabulous. Disintegration, those were my best summer mornings.
Did you not get moved on?
Summer lunchtime. Anyway, listen, folks, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much to my guests, Leo and Steve. They have been fabulous. Join me tomorrow. I will be joined by Nick Dixon and Simon Fanshawe. The sparks, I am sure, will fly. In the meantime, get a good night's sleep. Lie down properly. Good night.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
On Mark Dolan Tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday for big guests, big opinions and a big presenter. 6'5", don't you know? See you then on GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you. We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad.